quarterbacks this year, and we begin with last year's points champ. We all know who that is. One, Cam Newton was the most owned player on championship rosters last season. He put up the most fantasy points of any player last season as he won NFL MVP. However, before you start highlighting your draft cheat sheets, history not on his side. Every quarterback with at least 10 rush TDs in a season since the AFL-NFL merger lost at least 6 rush TDs from that total the following season. But look who's here, the talented Mr. Roto, Matthew Berry, in the house. Now, to give us his fantasy expertise, we need you here, Matthew. Who do you think is going to be the best fantasy quarterback this season?
Hi, Molly. Yep, just popping in for a quick second to tell you it's Cam Newton. #1 fantasy quarterback last year, will be the #1 quarterback this year. He's my #1 ranked guy. Look, you talk about the regression of the touchdowns, and sure, but he's had at least 5 rushing touchdowns every season he's been in the NFL. Those are designed runs around the goal line. Last 5 years, Cam Newton, top 3 in the NFL among quarterbacks in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Even if it comes down from 10, he'll still be 5 or 6. Not worried about that. That high floor because of his rushing is what's kept him as a high fantasy quarterback. But what happened last year is totally different. His average depth of target, which is how far down the field he's throwing, second in the NFL, only to Carson Palmer. He was really slinging it, and now this year he gets Kelvin Benjamin back. Remember the 35 touchdown passes last year. He is a true dual threat. To me, no stopping Cam Newton. He's my #1.
And Matthew Berry, I trust he is in our number 16, and we need to say congratulations to him. Over 1 million downloads on ESPN.com.
He's phenomenal.
Man, right?
He's phenomenal. But I'm going to be sacrilegious here because I'm going to disagree with Matthew Berry in a second. But go ahead.
All right, so who is it? Who do you think? He's going Cam Newton as the best quarterback this season in fantasy. Who's your guy?
Cam Newton, the reigning league MVP, my top tier 2 quarterback in the NFL. I understand those who would pick him #1, like Matthew Berry, and somebody sitting across from me probably as well. We'll find out in a second. But you know me. Where am I going, Molly Wood? Where am I going? He's a bad man. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers. Now, I was tempted to pick Big Ben Roethlisberger. Not Andrew Luck yet. He's got some things to show me. But I was tempted to pick Big Ben Roethlisberger. But of the last 7 years, he's only played the complete season twice. So I question Big Ben's durability. I don't like the fact that Martavis Bryant went out, because if Martavis Bryant had been there with him, with Antonio Brown, with Wheaton, with Ladarius Green being added there, with Le'Veon Bell not being suspended, I would have went the Big Ben route, because it would have, whether it was Le'Veon Bell or whether it was Martavis Bryant, I would have said Big Ben is the way to go. But since Le'Veon Bell and Martavis Bryant has gotten in the way of such a prognostication, I'm going to go with my fallback default position that never lets me down. Despite a down year last year, that's a down year for Aaron Rodgers. 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I mean, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers here. He hasn't thrown double-digit interceptions since 2010. He's a bad man, y'all. So let me tell you something right now. That was even last year, down year. This year, what do? They go out there, they get Jared Cook. You got a new tight end. You got Jordy Nelson coming back. Okay, Eddie Lacy is not going to eat himself out of the league. And Aaron Rodgers is a damn good scrambler himself. So you got to remember, even though Cam ran for more touchdowns, obviously, Aaron Rodgers threw 10 more touchdowns than Cam Newton. So when I look at it from that perspective, and that was last year, and I think about this year and how things are going to flow this year, I'm going to say it again. He's a bad man. I'm rolling with Aaron Rodgers, #1 as my quarterback, my #1 quarterback in fantasy football and real life, damn it. Over Tom Brady, over Ben Roethlisberger, over Cam Newton, over Russell Wilson, over all of them. He's a bad man.
You ain't lying. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, when he's all done, is going to be in the conversation as greatest who ever lived.
Okay.
That's how, I mean, you watch him now, he can do things that really no one else can do.
I appreciate the affirmation.
He is like in real life. For fantasy, to me, he's a tad conservative. I like guys who sling it a little more and are willing to take more chances. In other words, even throw more interceptions in fantasy because it gives them more opportunity to rack up fantasy points. Now,
oh, my Lord.
Saying that, you'd think maybe Drew Brees. And Drew Brees is a very good candidate. Russell Wilson's more like Aaron Rodgers. Great quarterback, but also a little bit on the conservative side for me to take as my #1 overall fantasy pick. In fantasy, I think, like it's about to be in reality, it's going to come down to the Cam Newton, Andrew Luck era. It was Aaron Rodgers at the beginning of last year who was saying, I asked him on Sports Nation, or maybe it was on the radio, I forgot already, but I asked him, who is going to supplant you as the best quarterback in the game? And we started discussing Andrew Luck, who in certain ways is a bigger, stronger version of Aaron Rodgers, but more of a gunslinger. Now, as it turns out, it was Cam Newton who made the argument to supplant Aaron Rodgers. But when I look at Andrew Luck from a fantasy point of view, the fact that he's a one-man gang there, a one-man band, from a fantasy perspective, I like. Now, remember, this is a guy, Cam Newton led with 50 touchdowns last year. 2 years ago, when Andrew Luck was healthy, he led the league with 40 touchdowns. But I expect some regression from Cam, not because he's great, but because it's rare that a guy's going to have 50 touchdowns.
So who's your number one guy?
And I expect Andrew Luck to end the season as the #1 fantasy quarterback.
Andrew Luck.
Andrew Luck.
Well,
not a great offensive line.
It took you long enough to get there, but let me tell you something right now.
Not a lot of targets, but I believe Andrew Luck is the pick.
You know, I'll applaud you for making sense. You do make sense because they have no running game. Okay, they loaded up 4 to 8 picks on the offensive line, so Indianapolis clearly is on a mission to protect him. The defense is not going to be that great. As a result, it may be awful. As a result, he's going to have to gunsling a little bit more in order to keep them in games. So I understand the plausibility of your argument, Max Kellerman. It makes sense. The thing is that the kind of things that Andrew Luck are going to be forced to do because he'll be facing losing propositions are the kind of things Aaron Rodgers is going to do naturally because that's just who he is, and that's just the way that he is, okay? I'm going to remind you again, a down year, and the dude's QBR was 64, and the dude threw for 31 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. A down year. And that was without Jordy Nelson. That was without Jared Cook. And that was with a fat, bloated Eddie Lacy, who I believe will be better.
He lost his job.
Listen, I've interviewed Eddie Lacy in the past. I'm a fan of his. I like him. But last year, he was out of shape. Now, he might have gotten bigger because you want to have some meat on you to absorb those blows easier, but it was to his detriment. So, damn it, this is what they were saying.
Okay, guys, enough.
I did not see Eddie Lacy in person. I saw him on TV, but NFL players were calling him the Pillsbury Doughboy. They were disrespecting him.
Molly, he lost his job.
They were disrespecting him. So I'll let it go. He's lost weight. He's in shape, and you're going to see dipping and dunking to him, not to mention what Jordy Nelson, the Randall Cobbs of the world, the Jared Cooks of the world are going to do.
Yes. In reality, you're right. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the world. Yeah. Maybe Cam will challenge him. Maybe in reality, you're right. But Aaron Rodgers is going to be, milking touchdown leads, field goal leads all season, and Andrew Luck's going to be down 3 touchdowns because his defense is no good. Even his O-line's no good. He's going to be having to air it out in the second half.
This is the only shot that Cam has of being the #1 in fantasy. That is this. Because Kelvin Benjamin has returned, and because you're going to see opposing defenses having to respect their passing game and defend their wideouts along with Greg Olsen, the tight end. The bottom line is this. Cam is going to have much more room to operate running the football. So if that is your argument, that is fine.
Rushing TDs and passing.
Let's see if Kelvin Benjamin can get separation coming off the ACL.
But he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
If you want to win a championship, listen to me and the talented Mr. Roto. It's Cam. When we come back, you didn't hear me. Antonio Brown was an absolute beast last season. Can he repeat as flex points champion, or can somebody dethrone him? We have a Pro Bowl receiver, Terrell Owens, in the house to help answer that question and join that debate. Stay with us.